On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Addhyan Pandey. He is Zoro's Senior Director of AI and Data. We're going to be talking about data platforms and serving the business. And what do I mean by that? Obviously, data has been there serving the business for a very long time, but now we are having a lot of discussions around advanced technologies and how they will serve the business. How are we going to find these platforms that will work with the human in the loop? And obviously, there's expectations and there are gaps to address. And Addhyan's on with us to talk a little bit about that. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Before we start, tell everyone what Zoro does, and then we'll dive on into the podcast.
Of course. So Zoro.com is an e-commerce platform dedicated to helping businesses and their people thrive. Our mission is to make it easy for our customers that are generally B2B, that are generally businesses, to find, buy, and get everything they need.
Awesome. Okay. Help us understand. Obviously, you came from cars.com. You're at Zoro now. You've been in the data science, the AI data space. When you're joining Zoro, tell us a little bit about where you guys are at within the, just your AI maturity.
So machine learning specifically, I'm not going to call it AI because a lot of applications that's being currently used within Zoro are, old school machine learning applications. Talk about recommendation systems, ML-powered search, marketing email management systems and stuff like that are all machine learning powered. So the concept of machine learning at large is not new to Zoro and has been there for like 6 to 7 years. Now, just like any other company, we are in this second or third wave of AI with GenAI in its application, and that's new to Zoro. We are currently in the process of building and scaling some of the initial LLM applications that we have created internally, and that's where we are.
So, and I think we talked about this before the recording, and I think that's where we kind of brainstormed topic. I joke with you, I go, companies have been wanting to orient self-service data for the very longest time. And now we're seeing a technology with, whatever we want to call it. I call it advanced technology because it could be ML, it could be AI, it could be generative AI, it could be a mix. But companies are starting to get into using these advanced technologies. And the one thing I said to you, and we both had a chuckle, was companies have really never even gotten traditional BI 100% right. I remember the days, and I'm sure anyone who has worked in data for a while knows you actually opened up some spreadsheets and massage data to make sure that the data worked. Can't do that with these data volumes. It's nearly impossible. As you're kind of viewing the horizon, and we're still talking about probably data quality as one of the bigger obstacles, areas of opportunities for us. Talk to us a little bit about how you view that, because, and the reason I'm asking this question, is that something we can go back and address in the data technical debt, or is it one of those cases where at some point you draw a line in the sand and you have to just look forward?
Yeah, I feel like we can definitely categorize this as data technical, or when it comes to machine learning, data science, scientific debt, analytical debt. Data is no strange to such debt-related topics. And you're right, a lot of companies haven't figured out how to do, BI right. And that's because how to structure data, the concept of, applying data governance and quality checks at the place where data is actually created, so like at the system of records, till the application layer and to downstream to the warehouse. Those checks are not at every single place, and so data quality suffers because of that. I feel like a lot of data teams just don't find time to go back and do it, primarily because the entire company relies on data organizations, and there's so many. The work is generally much more than the time and resources available to deliver and fix things that needs to be fixed. Hopefully, with better processes, data teams in general have begun to move faster in ensuring that platform is taken care of, governance is applied, and teams are not just delivering on small requests, but bringing in the product mindedness that's needed to actually build an effective data platform in teams.
And I like how you kind of categorized, the data as debt, because I do think it exists. And I think, just as a side question to you is, I think we hear the software engineering side and engineering side talk about the technical debt, and it's very common. It's a discussion. I'm sure you and any technologist listening to the podcast goes, okay, well, yeah, that obviously, Amir, when we know technical debt. And not a lot is made of the debt that exists within the data and how to address it, because unlike an application, you could decide, hey, I'm just going to throw this away and I'm not going to address it. I'm just going to rewrite it, right? That is an opportunity. With data, if your company has been, gathering data for 10, 20, 50, 60 years, that is much harder to make that decision as to where that line in the sand is. I guess when you look at this notion of, the opportunity to build on top of data, when you look at a project and when you're looking at low-hanging fruit as to, hey, these are areas we could leverage ML or AI in, do you take that in consideration? The fact that, hey, you know what? With the way the underlying data is, it just might not be an opportunity we could take advantage of?
Oh, yeah, all the time. So there are a ton of parallels between software engineering and the kind of debt you collect, and with data engineering as well. So concepts around scaling on demand, accessibility, security controls. So those things are fairly common across software engineering and data engineering. And we basically end up having those debt items, and we try to solve with platform related requests. But when any new request to either deliver on a service or product comes in, we try to evaluate them using certain principles that we have. So, for example, any new product that we build need to serve multi applications. So let's say you're building like an entity or a brand new table. Well, it has to have multiple use cases associated with it, with product engineering or product marketing, sales, finance. So you build like common entities or assets that can serve multiple customers within your organization. I think that just goes a long way. And when you think about creating data assets in that way, you also think about the cost needed to maintain it, the operational cost, what's the support structure looks like. And when the decisions are taken with such thoughtfulness, they generally serve you in the long term. Now, obviously, that there's certain requests that just comes in for very short period of time. Like you need this and you have to deliver. And typically, in order to prioritize certain business needs, you end up making those calls, and that generally ends up becoming your long-term debt, and you solve it, with time. Does that make sense, Amir?
No, it does. I think that does make a lot of sense. And it's interesting because what I'm hearing is as projects are coming up, you're not only thinking about the business requirement, you're not only listening to your stakeholder and going, well, these are ways we can help them, but you're also having to go back and go, can I even do that? Because I guess if it was a piece of functionality you had to write within software, it depends whether or not, well, maybe there's technical feasibility. Okay, that's true. But it's more dependent on, do we have the time? Do we have the budget? Is this a high enough priority for the company within the backlog to actually want to start working on? But in your world, it's more of a, well, if I can't get the data lined up, if I can't model the data correctly, if I can't take advantage of that, I might not be able to address this, solution for you. And we might have to think about something alternative. And that's a hard discussion because, this person who's in that seat might not have ever been there before, not responsible for the process and how data is being accumulated. Do you think we're going to start seeing a shift in stakeholders being more, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but more forward thinking with, hey, I'll adjust my processes because I know that there's a ramification for this if I potentially am not doing the right things in how we're dealing with data?
I think so. Like I hope so that folks start becoming more forward thinking. But I think the responsibility of that a little bit lies on like people like me who are sort of leading a data org. We need to engage more with our partners. We need to not just deliver on set requests, but act as a partner in figuring out the solution to a problem and not just intake a project. And I think that's like a mindset shift that we need. Project is generally straightforward, easy, but taking in a problem business problem that is, I think that's generally tougher. But I think, the latter is much more useful to any business. And, going back a little bit to, again, comparing it with software engineering, with engineering, you have an input and an output. So things are straightforward. A lot planning and discovery can be done ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
But, data science is like a big component of data overall. And with any scientific process, discovery takes a ton of time. Like input and output are not set. For example, if business wants you to predict something, well, we need to figure out if we have data to predict it, or if we have the right data to predict it. If that thing or is predictable or not to begin with. So I think a lot of ideation and discovery works need to go into building a data asset or data product than a typical software.
You mentioned obviously it's your job to have those discussions to set that expectation. What are you seeing? Because obviously there's a lot of interest, right? Like, when we're talking about reporting, big data, analytics before, that's a certain discussion. I think people see, oh, I need these to do my job. I need this report, this dashboard, this metric. But as the discussion around AI has been happening for the last couple of years, and the users are now starting to hear, oh, this thing potentially can help me become even more efficient, better at my job, et cetera, et cetera. How has your discussion changed? Is it becoming a little bit more of a, hey, I need this, and people are responding because they see there's a bigger payout at the end?
Yeah, I think a big shift is coming from the whole thought process around self-service. I think businesses and any team within your organization are looking for, just self-service in general, be it data to serve an analytics team, data to serve product team, like whole product analytics, like folks want it to be self-serve. The other thing that I think, which is generally good for technology teams, is that the answer generally cannot be, it's not possible, because new technology is enabling us and to basically change things that weren't possible previously to now possible, but it requires XYZ resources and time. So I think these two are like the major changes that are generally bringing positive impact to the business. The former one, which is around self-service, I think that reduces your operational costs, and the latter one, like, enables you to innovate more. So these are like the top two changes that I'm seeing.
Interesting. You mentioned self-service. Obviously, as we're looking at these, advanced technologies, when you're thinking about self-service, the discussion of the human in the loop comes into play. Is the notion of self-service going to, obviously with the human in the loop, it's kind of self-service, but self-service light? I don't know. I'm not sure what the term would be. I'm just kind of curious. I guess the question for you maybe is, as you mentioned self-service, and we're seeing technologies that are kind of looking like co-pilot type products working alongside the human. How is that going to change? Is it still going to be self-service? Is it going to be a different thing we need to start thinking about?
Yeah, I feel like I should have mentioned self-service, but with some human assistance. And when it comes to building purely AI applications, I think humans in the loop just becomes much more important, because we do not have, and I don't think we will have anytime soon, perfect AI tools and products. Now, my org is data and AI, and so different needs would have like varied amount of human in the loop, but generally it should always be there. So think of product analytics, for example. There's so many tools out there these days that does such a good job. So like things like Amplitude, Mixed Panel, Looker, like if you have data available, anyone can go, and these tools are built very thoughtfully, I think. And so a lot of things are very obvious. If you want certain KPI, you can build and publish report yourself. Obviously, data teams have to ensure data is structured in a way that these tools can make sense out of it. But generally, there is very little human in the loop component to solving product analytics problem. Same's true with A/B testing and other tools as well. But when you think about building an AI system that's basically helping, let's say, your product management team to analyze the data and then recommend some of the strategies that they may want to employ or want to test out. But that definitely requires human in the loop because AI can just end up recommending things that makes absolutely no sense or can actually take you backward.
I guess, you've been at Zoro for a few months, have a time period to kind of sit there and, take some assessment and, there's expectations, there's going to be gaps, there's going to be prioritization that you have to put in place. Walk us through a little bit, because obviously, there's a lot of things that can be done. You have constraints of budget, time, and resources. How do you start looking at, again, the data you have and how you can help your stakeholders?
So yeah, today actually I'm completing my 60-day and my onboarding has been quite structured thanks to my manager who's the CTO of Zoro.com. I think most of my time has gone into just listening to folks like various stakeholders of data, actually interacting with our existing customers and knowing what they need, understanding business and, building relationships. I think if the foundation is built right, I think that just sets you up for success. So I think in the first 30, 60 days, that's what I've been mostly doing. Now, a decent amount of time has actually gone into understanding what sort of data do we have and how is it organized. This generally helps me. So when I'm talking to like data science, teams that need data science services, if I understand that data is actually structured right and building a model, evaluating it, creating an API on top of it, like I can better estimate how much amount of time that would all need. And if data is not structured well, then probably my investment should go into data engineering first. So that's where I am right now. I've done it for a few of our core data entities, but I think a lot more work needs to be put in place before I can even comment on how much resource, time, and energy is needed to build XYZ and application.
Absolutely. Obviously, we might have to come back and check in with you again and see how things have gone at the year mark or maybe a little later and see the impact that you're seeing, because obviously a lot of work and probably a lot of opportunity. If someone wants to reach out to you to kind of talk to you about just a couple of things we've mentioned on the podcast, is that a good way of connecting with you?
I would love that. I love just the idea of talking to folks that are probably dealing with same problems that I am and just exchanging ideas. That has generally served me very well in the past. So I would recommend folks reach out to me on either LinkedIn or Twitter, and yeah, would love to connect.
Awesome. We'll definitely put those links in the show notes to make sure that people can connect with you. And again, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Amir. Love talking to you about it.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. Be back again, different guests, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think when we talk about data and serving the business, I think everyone easily can see areas of opportunities. And I think, as Addhyan mentioned, there's some constraints in terms of how we're going to take advantage of some of these more advanced technologies within the data space, some constraints that might not be seen as easily on the software engineering side. And it's going to be interesting to see how companies are going to deal with this. And maybe we'll have to have Addhyan back to talk to us about how he's been dealing with it in the next year. But share this with somebody else. I think this is going to be a common theme and discussion that data leaders have to deal with, AI and data leaders. I think this is not going to go away. And I think the more we talk about it, the better. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the podcast is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.